Okay, well, we're sort of thinking about this as an informal discussion to kind of give you an idea of what we talk about every morning when we have our news meeting. So Eleanor covers renewable energy, and she's also doing a lot on AI. Ben Maku is covering industrial decarbonisation, and Ben Munster is our resident fossil fuels / Hormuz correspondent. So Ben Munster, I'll start with you. Almost exactly 3 months ago, US and Israeli forces launched an air attack on Tehran, killing the country's leader and pretty much immediately causing a global energy crisis. That prompted the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and cut off around a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. The IEA described the situation as the worst energy crisis the world has ever faced. So you've been following the twists and turns of this. Could you give us a quick summary of how it's unfolded and where we are now?
Of course. First, hi everyone. So it's more from sort of different crises. It's changed. The crisis has changed its shape over the course of the last few months. I mean, at the start, it was all speculative, obviously, and the main worry was price in Europe, especially. People were worried. Every official that you would speak to would say, you know, Europe is relatively insulated from this crisis because we're not exposed to the Strait of Hormuz, but you know, the main worry is price because we're linked to global markets, and if Asian countries have to start fighting for supplies because they're much more exposed to Hormuz, we're going to suffer as well because the prices are going to go up. That did happen. So prices are higher at the pump already. It's been going on for the last 3 months. But then the real question hanging over all of this has been, will there be a supply shortage? Which would obviously also impact price, but also create potential genuine crisis and sort of make it much harder to actually secure supplies rather than just have to pay more for them. So, I mean, at the beginning, it was gas that people were worried about because I think we were sort of haunted by the aftershock of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when TTF, the benchmark gas price, hit 300 euros a megawatt hour briefly, and we had to sort of completely sever our energy links with Russia. That didn't happen. That hasn't happened yet. TTF, the benchmark gas price, is still pretty low. But at the start, everyone was talking about gas, especially people worried that we wouldn't have enough to refill by winter.
There was that moment where Iran bombed that facility in Qatar, which creates a fifth of the world's LNG. Yeah. And that got everyone freaking out. And then basically the EU, the Commission basically, there were these storage targets for winter, and it slightly lowered them, which gives countries a bit more time to sort of, they have a little bit less gas that they have to fill those reserves with, which means they can spread it out. And that kind of temporarily eased the crisis. I mean, the fears of a gas crisis. It's not quite clear. The gas situation right now, you hear from the Commission that it's actually going okay, that, refilling is going okay, because that was the big worry, that we wouldn't have enough by winter. We've basically, ironically, the main thing that we've done to sort of help ease those fears is just buy lots more from the US and also buy more from Algeria, especially gas-exposed countries like Italy and the UK. They're just going off and buying more gas from Azerbaijan and North Africa and the US. And that's kind of calmed those fears, ironically, because before the war, the big worry was that we were overexposed to the US, having been exposed to Russia. And then all of those fears flew out of the window immediately. You've been sort of covering these oil coordination groups a lot, and it's interesting. Whenever you talk to people who've been in those meetings, the message seems to be that it's all right. Nothing too much to worry about. Yeah,
I mean, they're getting more and more panicked, but always in between the lines. At the start, it was always, there are some price worries, but no supplies are secure for now. But then every single time they'll sort of hint that maybe supplies could be constrained in the near future, or slightly nearer future. And now it's switched. That's what's happened. The gas thing is not predominating officials' concerns at the moment, even though when winter comes and we start to get a sense of how filling is going, then it might start to concern people. But now the worry is jet fuel.
Yeah, so where are we with aviation fuel? Because there was a couple of months ago, people were saying summer holidays are ruined, you won't be able to fly, prices will be ridiculously high.
Right, so in the International Energy Agency, it put out this very dramatic prediction that jet fuel stocks in Europe had 6 weeks left to go. And this was around, well, we're actually now entering the 7th week after that statement was made. And people are still flying everywhere. People are flying just as much as they were. Demand hasn't actually gone down. We're holidaying just as much as we were. Maybe there's some sort of individual discretionary choices to travel a bit less. But governments haven't rolled out any significant demand reduction program at all. And people haven't really been doing it on their own steam because, if you're not encouraged to do so, why would you, right? You kind of...
Okay.
And
go on, quickly.
Just, may I?
I want to give everyone a go, but go on.
And what's interesting is that the IEA's prediction basically proved maybe it underestimated the extent to which markets would adapt. So we're buying much more jet fuel from the US. European refineries are pumping out much more. And there's some Nigerian refinery that sort of went back online, and that's sort of helped plug the gap.
Okay, sorry, I want to get to Eleanor.
Go on.
So
we might still be screwed.
We might still be screwed. It's so far we seem to have got away with the worst of it in terms of supply shortages. Yeah. But what has definitely changed is the debate, and the debate has really shifted to this. Our reliance on overseas fossil fuels means that we need to. It's a risk. It's a geopolitical risk, and we need to switch to clean energy. And Eleanor, this is very much your area, and you have been covering one of the biggest pieces of legislation currently being debated by Parliament and member countries, the European Grids Package. So what's the purpose of this package? And can you tell us a little bit about where we are?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, it's now currently being under negotiation both at Council and Parliament level, and it's a piece of legislation that the Commission presented back in December. And the aim is to really modernize and expand the current grid infrastructure in Europe. Just to put it into context, the European grid infrastructure is one of the oldest globally, and 40% of the current infrastructure is more than 40 years old, which means that it's almost a decade away to reach the end of its lifespan, which is quite concerning, and it really needs to be modernized if Europe wants to achieve its net zero goals and electrification goals as quick as possible. So that's why this package is very important. It aims at fast-tracking the build-out, but also the permitting, and coordinate better at European level to make sure that every country can get the electricity that it needs.
So you're touching on the central coordination. There have been some elements, that's one of them, that have actually been very controversial and have caused some countries to make a big fuss about the grids package. Could you talk us a little bit through what those fights are all about between member countries?
Yeah, obviously there are a lot of very politicized topics within this package. One of the most key political fights is actually the centralized scenario that was initially proposed by the Commission. The idea of the Commission is that coordination needs to be better planned and needs to come from a top-down approach. So in a way, it was proposed in the Commission to have a higher oversight, a better oversight of the coordination of the grids across Europe. And obviously, this has triggered a lot of backlash from member states and TSOs who are currently in charge of coordinating and planning the grid in their own country. Somehow this is still one of the key political fights because TSOs and member states, they argue they have better knowledge of what is needed on the ground than the Commission ever could. But it's still very much in the works, let's say, because still we don't have a clear idea what the Commission, how much influence it wants to have on this in coordinating this scenario. What we are hearing from member states is currently that they all agree that TSOs and ENTSO-E need to have a central role when it comes to drafting the methodology of this centralized scenario. So this is where the debate is at council level.
And I think so countries like France and Sweden have been some of the most vocal. They've given at times the impression they're going to derail the whole thing, but you're hearing that behind closed doors, actually, it's quite constructive, and it looks like they might reach a position.
This is what we have been hearing just last week from member states. So they seem quite aligned on the idea that TSOs and ENTSO-E, the agency coordinating TSOs, needs to have an important role here.
So they could reach a position later this month.
Yes, that's the idea, for the council to reach an agreement by 26th of June.
But Parliament will naturally, as always, take a lot longer.
Yes, the Parliament will probably reach an agreement ideally by end of October.
Yeah, so. Just very quickly before we go on to Ben Maku, you did an interview with Dan Jorgensen that's out this morning about the role about AI data centers.
Yeah.
Could you just very briefly talk us through what he has to say about that? Because obviously these are incredibly energy intensive, and will be competing for electricity with industry, households.
Yes, indeed. So I talked to Commissioner Dan Jorgensen last Friday. We talked about data centers, and this was the first time he really gave a public opinion on the role of data centers when it comes to energy. And it was quite interesting to hear him saying that he welcomes, Europe should welcome the role of data centers and AI on its continent, but he wants them to be energy efficient. So the idea was, they are welcome to be on our European soil, but they need to respect our net zero goals, climate goals, and energy transition goals.
And I thought one of his most interesting ideas was using the heat generated by them to heat homes. That was a new one to me. Ben Maku, turning to you. So your beat is industrial decarbonisation, which means you have got responsibility for one of the hottest political debates this summer, which is what the future of the emissions trading system. Could you talk us a little bit about what to expect from that reform of this most important climate policy for the EU?
Hello, I'm Ben. There's a lot of things to expect. I mean, the Commission's been, strangely, the Commission was kind of open about it. There was a private stakeholders meeting a few weeks ago where they talked about what will be in the ETS, and they released a series of slides, and in them they actually said this will be in the review. And one of the big things is carbon credits, obviously, as we know. One of the suggestions is that they're gonna extend the cap past 2039. There's even one Commission official said that there will be carbon credits well into the 2040s.
So that was the idea, that by 2039, the cap would reach zero, and you would basically not be able to emit anymore.
Yes, and to be fair, that was something that, I mean, I've been on this beat for 3 months about, but this is something that I've been hearing from the beginning, that this was going to be slowed down. It was almost like an open secret. The more surprising thing was, they mentioned that the free allocations, so the free carbon permits to pollute, would go past 2034, or some of them are being halved by 2030 and they kind of go down until 2034. It's all very complicated, but which is to say, if there are more free allocations, it'll change the dynamics for businesses and industry. So if that does happen, specifically what will happen will be interesting.
And high-emitting industry is really lobbying hard on this, aren't they?
They are. That's all they talk about. They need this
and they've got the ear of people in the national governments. I mean, who are some of the most? Which countries are most sort of going after the ETS?
There's a few. As we know, I'm sure you've been following some of our reporting, but there's a gang of 10 that have been predominantly very critical of the ETS, especially since the Iran war and the energy crisis began, led by Italy, Poland. Most recently, Czechia released a non-paper last week that was very critical of the benchmarks. And the benchmarks are essentially the formulas that the Commission uses to calculate the 10 best polluters, and then judges the free allocations for each industry based on that. And Czechia is saying these benchmarks are a problem. There needs to be more free allocations. And then shortly after that, France, which is kind of an ETS purist in some ways, but from what I've heard from some of my reporting, is a little less upfront about their contentions with it. They came out with a non-paper saying, actually, the benchmarks are a problem. Germany kind of seconded it. So there seems to be more broad support about tweaking the ETS. James doesn't like the word tweaking. So he's banned it.
It's a banned word.
It's a banned word. Watered down or extended, however you want to put it. There's broader support for that. I think it's not as sacred as we might think.
Yeah, I mean, but when there was an event that CEFIC, the chemicals lobby, organised in Antwerp a few months ago, where Germany even made some comments that suddenly it was like, okay, is the ETS actually on the table? Could they significantly water that down? There was a feeling. Italy also came out pretty strong on
very
courses.
strongly.
It feels like maybe that has died down, and actually any changes will be. They might be significant, but the ETS itself will remain intact. Is that your?
I think absolutely. Especially, I mean, if they signaled a massive change, business would be furious. And I think there's been so much investment in decarbonization already that, you know, if you're going to, and some of these investments are obviously long term. So if you mess with that, I think there'll be huge repercussions. But obviously, I think it's very clear there's changes that will be coming. Some countries will be mad, some won't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great insights, guys, and I'm sure we'll touch on all those topics and get into them in more depth as the day progresses. We'll now do a quick stage change before Zia, our other reporter, takes to the stage for an interview with Chris Bolester, Poland's Deputy Minister for Climate and Environment. And I'll see you again in an hour or so to talk to our reporters in Paris and Berlin.